Hello friends, welcome to FoxuTech. As we are seeing the troubleshooting sessions one by one, so far we have seen how we can troubleshoot the parts and also some of the errors like image pullback error and the crash loop error. So we have seen that in the last couple of videos, and today we're going to see another interesting topic, which is nothing but permission issues. So if you are working on Kubernetes, so permission issues is not so often we may see, but we may see very rarely. But even that is very critical to understand how we have to troubleshoot the RBAC issues. So even this is most important. Why? Because as we are moving towards GitHub or the latest modern technologies, and there we are bypassing the most of the direct user access, where it will be mostly like a service accounts or any kind of a third-party account, or the application going to own that kind of access management. So in that case, so we should have a best understanding how to troubleshoot this kind of a permission issues. So for that, we have to see we have to understand a couple of things. So one thing is nothing but first we have to understand RBAC. RBAC is nothing but it's a role-based access control. It's a fundamental part of the Kubernetes control access permissions, and this is help you to handle the permissions, like how you have to give the access to the users and what level of access the user should have, or any kind of account, what kind of access we have to see. Let's see summary about the RBAC. So how it is and how it's part of Kubernetes. So at the end, if you see like a Kubernetes, mostly it's calling the APIs, right? So we have seen even in the previous videos. So whenever you are doing any kind of operation, it's nothing but you are doing API things, and it's all managed by the API servers in the Kubernetes, right? So let's say like you are running a kubectl get pods, or you are running any commands like a describe or any command, it's handled by the API calls, and this is all handled by the API servers in the Kubernetes, right? So next is the policies. Policies are like how Kubernetes determines if the user is allowed to call this API or not. Let's say like you are running a command called kubectl get pod, and which account you are running from. Are you running from the default user, or you are using any kind of service account, or you are using any particular account? So those kind of policy will be stored, and whenever you are hitting, that policy will be validated first. Is the user is allowed or not? If the user is allowed, then it will list you the output. In case if you are not allowed to do that, so if it will be completely blocked, and you will get an error like a permission denied, or you can't access this, those kind of a thing, right? So and you should know there is a couple of things. One is role and role cluster role. So when you are speaking about role, it will be more specific to the namespaces, and when you are speaking cluster roles, it will be more for the whole cluster, right? So that is how it's handled. And part of that, when we speak about role binding, so role binding is a mechanism connects the roles and its policies. So here it comes to the place. First one is like a users, and second one is the roles. And whenever we are trying to connect the policies, and the roles will be assigned. So you have a role that apply to the multiple users, or the user has a multiple roles. So either can be possible, maybe it's right. So when we are working on organization, so you can be a part of like a, let's say you are a DevOps guy, so you have obviously you have multiple roles should be handled, right? So that on same time, like a DevOps group, let's take a DevOps group, and the groups can have multiple sub role users, right? So both is possible, and both as a requirement. So you need to have just role binding for each of the linkages, even, right? And the user can probably should be authenticating into the cluster using third-party mechanism. So mostly like if you are running in the organization level, and if you are using any kind of a cloud, so you may see that mostly it will be integrated with the Active Directory. If you are using Azure Active Directory, or any kind of Active Directory, if your organization owns, they will be mostly integrating that, and so with that you have to authenticate it, right? So those kind of things you need to understand how it works and how the permission is given to the users, right? So you don't need to manage the user, that is advantage, but when it's coming permissions, you have to handle very best, right? And so users can be loaded directly from the identity providers Active Directory, or let's say like you are using something like a non-user. Let's assume that's like a service accounts, right? So service accounts will be mostly used by the most of the applications, like as we are seeing Argo CD, even Argo CD has certain service account which is used internally. So those all will be handled out of box, not in the Active Directory. It will be handled within the cluster. So when that is happens, then you have to work for the permissions and what kind of permission it has to have, and those things you have to keep check on that, right? So next is like so mostly we are seeing like RBAC, but there is a attribute based access controls, or they called as like ABAC, ABAC, and there's another permission thing where its request evaluated based on the attributes of the requester. And the next is like a role scoped with the namespace and cluster roles for the cluster, as I said in the role binding. So if you are creating any kind of a roles, that's, let's say like you are creating any pods and those things, you have to restrict within the namespace, then you have to assign the roles. But even the user has a cluster role, it should be bypassed, because otherwise it will be like a confuses to you. You have to remove him from the cluster role, so then you have to assign only the roles, normal role, and it will be assigned only the whatever the things you are giving, right? And the next thing is like a principle of loss privilege, where you can get some certain roles and map them to the specific users. So you may need something like not every user may have same access. You have to create a separate users from the separate permissions, then you have to assign that accordingly, right? So that is on the RBAC overview. Hope this is hope this is clear, but we'll see separately how the RBAC and what is RBAC and also, as this is more focused to the troubleshooting part, the points are mostly covered for the troubleshooting aspects. So when you are speaking about anatomy of the role, so this is how the role manifest looks like, right? So this will have like a which version of API you're using and what is the role or what is the kind it's using, and some metadata about that. And below that you can see there is a roles defined. So in the roles you can say like what are the resources they have to use and what kind of permission they have to use it, right? So in that you can see the first one is API groups, which API version you are using. So that is more specific for any manifest. You should define it very well, right? And also you can see there is a API groups on the resource, role side. So API groups, you can see it's mostly empty. So why? Because it's like mostly all the resources will be allowed. So that is how the Kubernetes, and you see this is 99% mostly that same. Next is the resources. When it's coming resources, it's nothing but what kind they have to use it. What is the kind? Like it can be a any kind of a resource name. Either it can be a pod or deployment, services, config map, everything will be defined on the resources. And verbs, the verbs will have like a what kind of access the user should have. So those access are nothing but the actions. Actions kind of like a get, watch, list, or if you want to grant more familiar, few more permissions, you can grant it with this, right? So this is the things you should understand, and this is pretty much on the roles part, right? So we will see role binding how it's look like, but that is pretty much very clear. But this is the one you should understand, because if you have any kind of separate API groups, and this is the pattern you have to follow, and you have to give that. Either you can give as array or you can give as a list. So it's up to you. But here it's shown as a array, right? And this is just the basics, and next coming to the troubleshooting, the scope of the video. So the troubleshooting is most important thing. So how you will troubleshoot if there is any issues comes, right? So first you have to say that the user is mapped correctly. Let's say some of the user is coming from the RBAC, Active Directory, and that user you have to assign, that user should be getting an error called some of the permission is not accessible or something, right? So what happens on the time? Obviously, you should grant a proper permissions to the users, and the users should be part of proper groups until unless user will get a permission in it. So that you have to make sure the user is part of correct group, right? So is it linkage the entity to the correct policies? So again, as we said, the policies should be another important topic. So you have to check, is it like the role, whatever it's created, it's given or not, right? It's kind of a rollback again. So as you said in the groups, and as you may say like, hey, I have created the role, but still the user is not working. Maybe there is no role binding is yet implemented, right? Let's say like you have, that may not happen when you're handling with a single users or single binds. But let's say like you are creating a bulk of the users and something, and in that case, obviously it's a human errors are possible, as we say in the other videos. So that can be granted, like is it correct, granted with the correct values. And does the policy grant required permission? Again, there is you have created roles and you have created role binding. But does whatever the user is trying, is that permission is given to that? You have to again check, revalidate the actions. And if that is there, then you have to check take a look. And we have seen the policies, and next thing, is there any other security resources that to play, like a pod security admission controller or security context? So that is like a very high level. So you have to check, is there any error or need an argument, and any other security resources settings to the environment could be the issue. So that's pretty much possible, right? So it may be limiting the actions to the clusters. So just you have to check that point also, permission and errors, and you have to see based on that what kind of error, and you have to drill down the accesses, right? So this is the things, and let's see one of the examples. So let's take one of the user, and that user will, and we have a cluster, and in that cluster there is a 3 namespaces. One is development and production and Prometheus, right? So the developers required a full access. Obviously, you need a full access. And production namespace, obviously, she should not have any kind of a full access. And as it's pretty much handled via different manner, if you're using GitOps or Argo CD take case, even development environment, correct, but in case, right? And also, is it like any other automation tool, it can be handled the name production namespace or SRE take case, and developer doesn't need any kind of access, such a full access to the production. Monitoring, obviously, there is no need for developer to check any kind of a monitoring, but it's not a case, but in case, right? Let's take example here, and that is what we're gonna achieve it, right? So let's see the example first. Let's check, is it a user able to do any kind of operations first, and we're gonna see as following, right? First thing we're gonna see, is it the user able to do any kind of operations first? If he able to do any kind of operation, and what kind of operation is not allowed and what kind of operation is not allowed. We're gonna test it first. Okay. So second thing, what we're gonna do, so we're gonna create certain roles, and we're gonna say, hey, this is what you're gonna do, like that. So let me log into my node. Meantime, let's see that. Okay. Let me increase my window size. All right, so we have this is the details, and let's check what we have today. Before we are doing any kind of operation, let's check the particular user has any kind of access, or he can view any parts, right? So currently we have, let's show you the namespaces available. Take the namespaces. We have group config on page. Okay, so what are the namespace we need? We have development and we have production and we have monitoring, but we don't have Prometheus. Let's create it, kubectl get create namespace. It's a Prometheus, right? Okay, we have namespace now. What are the namespace we need? So let's quickly check the developer user as access. So for that, I'm using a kubeconfig called dev, and let me check for namespace get pod. I'm going to check the pods first, and first namespace is Prometheus. The user is not permitted. It is getting a conflict. So let's check the quickly for the other two also. Production. Get po-n production same development same. So far the user doesn't have any kind of access as we said, right? And now we should give the access to the user, right? So for that, what you have to do, we have to create the role first. Okay. So how to create the role? So we have already have a template. Let's check that quickly. So you can see this is the role. Okay. So this is the role it does dev user, and it's going to allow only pods. The user cannot do a deployment, and he will have a particular namespace. You can see we are deploying to the selected namespace, and he can do all the accesses, but we are not doing anything for any other namespaces. Okay, and the same thing for the role binding. So when you say role binding, so this is a kind role binding, and just we are doing a metadata, and as we are giving the user is dev, so we have named the user, and we have given the role is deployment user. So let's confirm this is the correct on the role, and the name is dev user. So let's change that to dev user. Okay. So make sure the name is correct. Otherwise, as we said, this may be one of the issue and you may face the issues, right? So now the namespace is correct and the metadata is correct. Everything is set. Let's try to create it. kubectl apply -f pod roles -m. So already we have defined it. I'm not going to use it. kubeconfig. As I'm using primary one, so the role has been created. Next is role binding. It should be binding, and both has been created, right? So now let's try to run it on the one development environment with the developer user. So I'm going to use the same command. See, no results. Now you can see this is the command we have used, and you can see still it was showing a permission in it. Now you can see it's improved with permissions are there. So same thing, let's quickly check for the other two and make sure even that is not affected here. It should not be, but let's check it. So still we are getting the same error for production, and the next one for Prometheus, right? Sorry. Get PO Prometheus. Okay. So we have confirmed only we can able to see it on the development environment. So we can see there is no resource. So we have test pod here. So you can see the file. So let's quickly create that and see is it allowed on the any namespaces. So I'm first going to try it on the production. So as I know it's going to fail, I'm just testing it, right? And apply, and I'm gonna say it should be tried on the production. Okay. Using a dev user again. So I'm using a dev user one. So just check. You are not allowed to do this operation. But when I'm going to do it on the development environment, sorry, namespace, it should allow me to do that. Yes. So you can see I have access to do that. So next, quickly check again the parts can be listed. Get parts on the production. No, it won't be. It's creating, but that's not the scope of the thing. Anyway, it's running now. And so now we were not able to do, once we created that record part, role and role binding, we are able to create the parts, right? So our scope is, what is our scope here? So development, full access, yes, we can do the part creation. Let's try to delete also, right? So let's confirm it. Do we have delete access, right? Okay, so just we have to do one more thing. So let's describe it. Describe pod, test-pod. Yes, we can see that. And okay, so now the next goal is delete, as we should have full access. Delete also one of the part of the access, and it's going to delete it. All right, so we have confirmed in development environment, we can create, we can just watch, and we have to test it, like we have seen how it works. And also we are able to do the delete obsession, right? So far it's good. So let's do one more thing. So one more scope still we are missing. One is nothing but read access. Even though the namespace we have, we can't see anything on production, but we have to see on the read access, right? That is our scope. So how to achieve that? So to do so what we're gonna do, we're gonna create another set of role for the production specific. So for that, we're gonna create a role first. The role will be nothing but, so let's quickly do that. So I'm gonna say read role, so as we can use it anywhere. Okay, so I'm creating a file, and the content will be like, as it's going to be only read, we're gonna restrict with our export content. So here this is the one. So this is like a prod read, and the production is our namespace, and which is nothing but role. And what are the deployments we are giving? Deployments and pod, you can do get, watch, list. You can't do anything, any other operations. Okay. So let's compare it with the pod role, what we created for development and test. Here you can see we have given additional things, create, update, patch, delete, but we are not giving any such a things on the production environment. Okay. So now let's apply this kubectl apply -f read role -q config is my config name. The pod role is created, and next I'm going to create a role binding as I said. So only role is not enough, we have to create a role binding also. So I'm going to rename it as read role binding dot YAML. So binding dot YAML. So in this, what we have to do, we have to define which user we are giving and what is the role it should be part of, right? So this will be look like this. You can see it here, the role name is prod root, sorry, read, and this is the user we are giving, production is the namespace, we are naming as a fonts. Okay, so let's do that again as we said. And role binding we are giving, perfect. So earlier we were seeing the user, whatever operation he is trying to do, like whenever you try to read any data on the cube production namespace, this is the user and we were getting only permission in it. So let's see that. Now you can see the resource. Let's try one more thing here. So earlier as we doing apply, so I'm gonna apply the same here. Sorry. And let's try to create the pod and see. Okay, so let's see if the role is working fine. Yes, role is working fine because the user doesn't have any kind of a create role or anything. So only he can able to see the resources, but he can't do any other operations. So let's quickly do one more thing. Let's quickly update this via primary user and let's see that we can view the pods. So production environment, you can see now, so you can do the view permission. Okay, it's taking a time. Okay, it's there. And let's see the description is working. Describe part, test type one prod, pod. Yes, you can see the parts and you can describe it as he has access. So let's try one more operation. Is it allowed? But it should not be. Edit access, right? So you can't do anything on that, so it should be failing. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do the change here. Right, so you can see this, right? So it's not able to do it because we don't have a patch permission. Well, all right, so this is how, guys. So you have to check the proper role is given. So whatever the role you are doing, so make sure it has a properly defined. And the second thing is the role binding. Whenever you have a roles and role binding, check the roles are correct. Whatever the permission it's trying to do, is it permission is given? And the same thing like the whatever the role you have created, it has proper binding. So let's assume like you are using a user and you have created the role and you have given to the different user and the particular user is still failing. Maybe there will be a single typo, there will be a name change. Always have a double check and also you check which namespace or which scope of the requirement they are trying and is it matching here. Okay, so collect everything and check each and every value and also you check the roles whatever you given and you have to check. Maybe the resources also sometimes you may missed. If you have, let's assume the user is failing while deploy and you have given only some certain different resources or they may trying to do something on ingress and you didn't given the role. So those kind of operation may be keep failed. So you have to keep check that and you have to assign the proper resources also here. Okay. And if there is any custom or third party API groups or comes into the pitch, so then you have to do the third party also. So you have to check that and based on the error, you have to give the access and which resource it's failing. Okay. So you can keep check that and we will be keep posting such suggestions and you can read it on the FoxuTech also. We will be releasing any kind of articles. So with that, you will understand best understanding on this RBAC, how the RBAC works and how we can create for the detailed ones. And hope this video is helpful, guys. If it's helpful, please share with your friends. Like us, share us, your feedback, so that will help us to improve our quality also. And we will be trying to do more videos like this and more interesting topics. We'll bring one by one. So please support us. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend and great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.